Cape Coral, southwest Florida, a city woven with over 400 miles of canals and waterways. On the southern edge of Cape Coral is Rotary Park. There, you can find a butterfly house, a dog park, plenty of recreational areas, and a green iguana that the state of Florida wanted to put to death. This is the story of Green Day the iguana. Green Day sits on the ledge of his cage soaking up the Florida sun. He calls Rotary Park his home, but he didn't always live in the maximum security enclosure you see before you. About 13 years ago, Cape Coral experienced a massive drop in temperatures, and the iguana population experienced a massive dropout of trees.
It was really, we had a real cold period. I think it was in January or February. And iguanas were falling out of the trees. So somebody brought Green Day in, and that somebody was one of our camp kids. So we have a nature camp here, and the camp kid had it for a little while, made friends with it, but decided he didn't want to keep it any longer. So like many things children want to bring home, they end up here at Rotary Park.
Rotary Park took Green Day into their care, where he lived in the butterfly house. However, he quickly outgrew the butterfly house and graduated to a bigger enclosure. I talked to Cheryl Anderson, a member of the board of directors of the Cape Coral Friends of Wildlife and the curator of the butterfly house, about Green Day's history.
Well, he lived in the butterfly house for a couple of years, but then he got too big to live in the butterfly house. So that's when they built that other enclosure for him, the entrance to the park, where every person that came in saw him. He became a popular favorite, to the people that come to the park. And there were people that would shop for him at organic stores and bring him special food. And I mean, he was just very popular. He was very docile.
So you might be wondering, how did Green Day go from this to this? And why did the state of Florida want to execute him? Well, we have to go back even further. Green iguanas are native to Central and South America. They were first introduced to Florida in the Miami area in the early 1960s. An exotic pet dealer intentionally released over 300 of them in the area in 1964, and that's just the one we know about. Green iguanas are popular pets because they're cute and low maintenance, but then they grow up, and their cage requirements become more demanding, and it becomes more likely that they will be intentionally released, contributing to the invasive reptile problem. In the wild, iguanas will chow down on foliage and flowers, most fruits and almost any vegetable. They dig burrows that cause damage to infrastructure and poop everywhere. I'm paraphrasing the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, by the way. Even worse, they may be a threat to native endangered species of tree snails and the Miami blue butterfly, and when it gets cold, they fall out of trees. In April 2021, the FWC added iguanas to their prohibited species list. This means that it is illegal to sell, release, or possess iguanas unless you have a permit. It also defines the specifications for such an animal's enclosure.
Here's the thing. The FWC, is Florida Wildlife Commission. It's their job to control exotic species, right? Well, they don't have a lot of luck controlling them. So what they decided about a year ago was, we're going to control all the ones where we know where they are in cages, right? Because you have to have a permit to have one. So that's when they changed the rules on the enclosures. And that's how they decided they were going to crack down on exotic wildlife, by cracking down on the ones that they knew where they were and were in cages and weren't being taken care of, right, and weren't being released. So that's what necessitated the new cage, because they said if we didn't build the new cage per their specifics, that they would confiscate him and they would euthanize him.
Save Green Day. Not the band, but this guy, a Cape Coral legend. An iguana that's greeted people for years at Rotary Park may only have 25 days to live.
It's not sick, but it could be killed thanks to new regulations.
Green Day is on the clock. He could be euthanized in less than 30 days.
The FWC has come to Rotary Park, and they have said that the cage he's in and the Nile monitor lizard is not satisfactory to FWC's standards.
Her group and the city is raising money, trying to get him a new cage before that deadly deadline. But Donaldson says the FWC gave them late notice.
They weren't specific with Rotary Park as to specifically how to build it.
The FWC's Chapter 68-5 that governs this sort of thing is lengthy and wordy, and it's kind of hard to follow. Here, let me read to you the section that deals with prohibited species and their enclosures, which is Rule 68-5.007, subsection 7, subsection C. Captive prohibited reptile species shall be maintained in facilities in safe, locked, and proper housing in cages, and cases or enclosures of the following specifications. The doors of each enclosure shall be enclosures kept indoors shall be structurally sound and constructed using the following or otherwise. And so this is the set of rules that led to Green Day's new habitat.
You saw the building. I mean, if you were going to design one, you probably would have done it a little different. We would have. There's no drainage in it. When they were pouring the concrete, there's no drain holes. I'm going, how do you think this is going to drain? How do you think all the waste and stuff is going to get out of here if you don't put drain? There's no drain holes in it. I mean, the whole thing over the whole time, because this was a effort that went for over a year, because we were pushing against it as long as we could until they finally just said, you either do it or we're going to come and get him. And that's it. So that cage is $20,000. That's what it cost to build that.
$20,000 for a new cage, for an iguana, an invasive species that the state of Florida allows you to kill and even provides humane instructions for doing so.
Not everyone agrees with the effort to save Green Day.
Yeah, and we are getting some people that are, not supportive. They're invasive species, and what are you spending all this money for?
But Donaldson says some things are just worth saving.
So he became very popular, and when it came to we either build this cage or they kill him, then people decided we had a GoFundMe set up for it, and the Friends of Wildlife kicked in $10,000, the Rotary Club kicked in $10,000, and then the Friends of Green Day spent $3,000, and that's how we got the cage built.
That extra $3,000, by the way, went to painting the educational mural on the walls of the enclosure.
For the mural, it looked like a bomb shelter or a restroom, okay? Because it was just those adobe walls. So we hired a mural artist, and she painted lots of the beautiful wildlife of Cape Coral on there. So even if people came, like when you came to town, if you didn't see all those animals do live in Cape Coral. So you can see them there on the mural there in the park.
But that still doesn't seem to answer the real question here. Why go through all the trouble? Why raise and spend so much money? I realize they're called the Friends of Wildlife, but it's a steep price to pay for an animal that no one seems to care about in the state of Florida. There's this vague notion of it's the right thing to do, but Cheryl sees it a little more clearly.
I look at it that Green Day has given his life to educate us on the mistakes and problems we make with bringing wildlife from other places to Florida. He gave his life to that, because if he didn't live in that cage, he would have had a life, probably not as long, who knows, but we would have been able to live in the wild. So I think we owe him. We owe him for what he's given up to teach us.
Iguanas didn't walk to Florida by themselves. We put them there. Invasive or not, it's our fault they're here in the first place. Sure, it may seem like a steep price to pay for an animal that isn't native to Florida, but as Cheryl pointed out, Green Day's life serves a purpose. He teaches us about the consequences of our actions and the impact we can have on the environment. So while the Friends of Wildlife may have spent a lot of money to save Green Day, in the grand scheme of things, it was a small price to pay for the valuable lesson he teaches parkgoers every day.